everybody. My name is Abigail Schmitz, and I am the education intern for Great River Shakespeare Festival. I'd like to welcome you to the pre-show conversation for our production of An Iliad. Now, if you're here for Shipwrecked, don't worry, because that will start as soon as I'm done. So you're just gonna sit and listen to me for a little while. It'll be great. If you're worried about seating, the seating for Iliad is general, and we are gonna open house as soon as I'm done speaking. So everybody will get started on seating at the same time. Okay, has anyone ever heard of the Iliad before? Anyone? Excellent. Well, for those of you who are not familiar, the Iliad is an epic poem with 15,693 lines. So, since you guys are all experts, would anyone like to recite it for me? No? Maybe later. Okay. So, the Iliad was written by an ancient Greek poet, Homer, and it detailed the last moments of the Trojan War. It's estimated to be one of the earliest works in the Western literary tradition, and possibly the most popular because we're still telling it 3,000 years later. So take that, Shakespeare. Yeah. Speaking of, did anyone see Troilus and Cressida when we produced it 2 years ago? Yeah? So if you did, then this plot will sound familiar because even Shakespeare told a rendition of this classic story. Since we're all experts here, does anybody remember how the Trojan War started? Paris stole Helen, that's right. So it was the abduction or the elopement of Helen, Queen of Sparta, by the Trojan prince Paris. The Greeks went to go get her back, and they ended up fighting in Troy for 9 to 10 years. So does anybody remember how the Trojan War ended? This is way more popular. Yes, Christian, what is it?
The Trojan horse.
Exactly, the Trojan horse. Very good. Okay, so the Greeks made a peace offering and they hid inside this huge wooden horse. And at nightfall, when the Trojans had brought it inside their gates, the Greeks jumped out and they laid siege to the city. They decimated it. There was nothing left. So An Iliad is a modern adaptation of Homer's The Iliad. It's a one-person show that Great River has cast with 2 leading actors, Tara Flanagan, who you may recognize. She was Rosalind in As You Like It last season, and Andrew Carlson. He was Hamlet when we produced that not too long ago. So they are running the show in repertory with one another, which means they're switching off. You can see Tara one night and she's performing today, or you can see Andrew a different night. It'd be a little strenuous on our actors if they were to run a one-person show all season on top of all of our other productions. So in a usual rehearsal process, the director makes a calendar and they usually block scenes and they work scenes and then they run certain parts of the show. And throughout this process, the director is giving the actors notes on things that they can enhance to help the director achieve their artistic vision. Now, Tara and Andrew had never done a show exactly like An Iliad before, so they took the time to find a process that worked best for them. Now, what worked the best in the end is they would take turns workshopping their performance while the other served as an observer. So neither was a typical director. There was no hierarchy in the process, but they guided each other in what was clear storytelling and what was unclear. So continually up until the last rehearsal, they would experiment with the new things in their performances, while one of them was consistently serving as a mirror, as someone who was advocating for the play itself. And one of the most common comments that I heard from apprentices and interns like myself who went to go see Tara and Andrew in rehearsal is that they would stop rehearsal and Tara would say, "Hey, did that make sense to you? What do you think I could do to make this more clear?" And they would actually consider our opinions because they had such a limited amount of people in the room that it was all this very collaborative process to get to their end goal, which was to be clear storytellers for you guys. Tara even had the privilege of being able to meet with Dennis O'Hare, one of the playwrights of An Iliad in New York before rehearsals began, and he was able to provide her with some extra insight. For instance, he told her that the play title is An Iliad rather than The Iliad because it's just another rendition of the story, and being the latest installment in the oral tradition. He also empowered Tara and Andrew to write to them if they had any questions, and he told them that he wanted Tara and Andrew to personalize the script for the people of Winona so that it could touch more closely to home for you guys. And Tara said that she felt thrilled to have met with such a passionate writer and that she was very excited to start telling this story for you guys. Now, Tara and Andrew are ready to tell you this story. It's one of heartbreak and war and how conflict can divide a people and make someone question their humanity. It also allows us to jump back in the past and say, who were the Greeks? Now, despite this decade-long conflict, they weren't just a people of war, and the best way we can go back and look at their culture, because during this time period they were mostly illiterate, is to look at their art. And their art mainly showcases times of conflict and religious stories, because those are the stories that they had to tell. Times of conflict make for wonderful art, as you've probably noticed this summer, with some very choice Shakespearean headlines hitting the news. We have music and pottery and theater and poetry, and these are all methods of storytelling. Stories like An Iliad were told for years and years and years until someone took the time to write it down. Now, that's not something that's unique to just ancient Greek culture, and that's not something that has changed over these thousands of years. That's something that transcends culture. It's unique to humanity. We tell stories, and we tell stories, and we tell stories, and then someone paints them on a cave wall, and then somebody etches them into a tablet, or they write them on a piece of paper, or they type them on a typewriter, they write them on a laptop. The method of recording the stories, it changes, but stories stay the same. Now, An Iliad brings this ancient story forward, and it's inclusive to both the positive and the negative aspects that result in war. So we all here are touched by war in some way, shape, or form, whether it feels like it or not to us. It could be the fact that our country's at war right now, even though it doesn't feel like it. It could be the fact that you have other people fighting your wars for you so that you don't have to, and they protect certain freedoms for you living in this country. It could be the fact that you know someone who's served, you know someone else who knows someone who's served, or you yourself could have served. There's so many different options. Now, I would like to invite you guys to participate in an interactive activity. If you were given an Iliad Pre-Show handout, it will have a little piece of paper on the inside that says, "My war story is." Now, I would like to encourage you guys and invite you to participate in sharing whatever you feel like is most personally your connection to war. And we are posting them right now on this giant Trojan horse cutout. Guys, feel free to come through. You're not going to interrupt us at all. But we have this giant horse cutout on the other end of the lobby, and we've been recording throughout the show's progress on what these stories are and what war means to us as the people of Winona. And it's very special to be able to do that with you guys, because it's just blown my mind in how many things that we've been able to record. And if you guys don't have the materials to do that right now, there's a table set up by that wooden horse cutout, and you can do it on your own time, whatever is most convenient for you. But whenever you guys are done doing that, feel free to drop it in this little blue bucket with your pencils and your papers here, and I will hang that up for you guys. We're also doing a military service recognition fund, and we're trying to raise funds for veterans to see our shows for free this season. So if you have any loose change in your pockets, I would also encourage you to drop that in that bucket so we can get some free tickets for some veterans. Feel free, you're fine. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to come out and speak to you today. If you have any more questions, I'd like to open the floor for questions right now. Anything about the rehearsal process, or the Trojan War, or maybe the Muse, anything that you guys have questions about. Well, that means I must have done a very good job. Awesome. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the show, and I'm going to hand it over to Travis for the Shipwrecked Pre-Show conversation. Thank you guys very much.